Begin the current Daf Mesechta Bava Kama Daf Kufyud Beis. Begin the top line of the Amud. We were first finishing up a conversation from the previous Daf. We had opened up this final parak, a goes lamachal, that if someone steals and he feeds it to his children, or he leaves it in front of them, so it's parts from paying. So Bava Kama had said Zois Emeres. This tells us that Rishus Yerish is Rishus Lekeach Dami. What do you mean? One of the cases was if a father steals and he dies and he leaves it for his children. They're parted from returning it. Well, why would they be parted from returning it? Obviously, it's because it's considered as a transfer of possession from one domain to another domain. Then you have Yish and Shin Rishus. Okay, so then they're not mechuyev to return it, which Rava disagreed. He says, no, it's Toma Kasha'achim when they ate it, and therefore that's why they don't have to. But if it was around, they would have to, because Rishus Yerish is Lav Rishus Lekech. But the Gemara now brings that this conversation that we had, Machlekes Rambam and Rava, was actually taught on a different topic, not necessarily that of our Mishnah. Throughout the entire world. So I'm discussing today's daf. As the Gemara later on tells us, if similar to the halacha of our Mishnah, if their father left over for them and he passed away, a pagash ula, he had borrowed a cow and then he died. So the children are allowed to use it for the entire time of when the loan was for. Now, what happens if something happens to it? So then they're not chayiv in the instant like a regular child. And moreover, if their father leaves over for them property, then they are obligated to pay. Now, there's a machlekes, and the Gemara brings in the brisa between the Chum hold whether they're adults or minors they're obligated. Some hold only adults but not ketanim, which that gets us in the conversation because ketanim are like as if they're not here. It's shaloi b'fnei baldin because they're minors, and the Gemara gets into a discussion regarding dinim mamanis that you are makabel eid shaloi b'fnei baldin, that you could accept testimony even not in front of the litigant. But din nefasha, as we know, you cannot accept testimony not in front of the litigant. And then some exceptions are kim shtaris de rabbanan regarding authenticating a document which is only rabbinic. That Taisus explains, therefore that could be done in all situations, even shalei b'fnei baldin. And some of the other terms the Gemara gets into is psicha, darchasa. These are different types of letters that the court writes against someone who refuses to show up for court. So we begin the current daf. Daf Kufyud Beis. We're just first finishing up a conversation with the previous daf. As the Gemara says, Rav Ada bar Ava, Masnin lahod Rabbi Bava Kama, he teaches this teaching, which remember, Rabbi Bava Kama had said an inference of the halacha of our Mishnah. After quoting the halachic Mishnah, the Mishnah halacha of Hagozel Machal and Hagozel and Hinich Lefneim, that they're going to be part from paying. Rabbi Bava Kama said that tells us Rishus Yerish Rishus Lekech Dami. He teaches on a different halacha on the following brisa. The brisa says, let's say the father was a money lender, and now it's money launderers. It used to be money lenders. So the money lender, he would charge interest. Now, and the father passed away. So although the children know that this is interest, they don't have to return it to the borrower who had paid interest, which is forbidden. Oh, on that you're generally a lender who charges interest without a het iska, whatever, the iser, you have to go and return it. The children don't have to. So on that Rabbi says, this tells us Rishus Yerish Rishus Lekech Dami. It must be that when the inheritors inherit their father, it's like a transfer to another, like a buyer, and now you have a Shina Rishus, and therefore they don't have to go ahead and give it back. Which the top Taisus is bothered. He says, wait a second, how do you say anything about Rishus Lekeach? Even if it wasn't Rishus Lekeach, it would still make sense that they're parted because the borrower gave it on his own. It's not like a gezela, it's like a loan. Therefore the children don't have to return it because it's an oral loan which you don't collect from the Yarshin. Says Taisus, no, even though the borrower gave it on his own, but it still like has halachic status as gezela because it's a mistaken giving. Because he didn't give it to him like a gift. He gave it to him in the medium of interest. And that's considered when the Gezel is still around, because since the money's here, they have to give it back, if not for the fact that it would be like Rishus Lekeach, and the Shina Rishus, therefore it says, Rabbi Bava must be, you see, Rishus Yerish Rishus Lekeach Dami.
Money of Ribis also?
Yeah, of course. It's in the Torah to charge interest.
And even if someone gets interest, gives the interest, it's also.
Yeah, that's exactly what Torah is discussing. Right.
No, I'm saying.
Right. We're saying when you don't do it with a
Be
permitted.
careful, that's why maybe you have to be careful where you take money from, from Jew, that might be.
Well, that would be Rishus. That would be Shina Rishus. Here we're talking about the Yarshim from the father who had lent.
Shina
Rish-
Rishus on rivers is.
Yeah, like even Gazela is also the same thing because you have a Shina Rishus. But here with the Yarshim, that's the conversation. Rabbi Chama wants to say, oh, obviously you see that a Yarish is not the same thing as his father. It's like a change of possession. Where Rav Amar, they don't have to give it back.
Yeah. So it's not, is it mutter to use?
I don't think there's an Issa be'etzim in the money itself. It's not a Surah Hana. It's just that if you have a Chiv to give it back.
So you're using.
Right, but the children didn't do an Isser. And even the father didn't do. Once the Isser is done, what does that have to do with the money?
They are benefiting from a Isser.
I don't know. What does that mean? You're benefiting from? I don't know if they're benefiting from the Isser per se. There's money over here that they're inheriting from the father. So therefore, they al kapanim the chiva shava they wouldn't have to have if you hold rishus yerish is krishus lekech. And that Rav Amay says no. Truth, I would tell you rishus yerish lav krishus lekech. No, the possession of the inheritor is not like the possession of a buyer. So then, if they're just like the father and the gzela money, so to speak, the way Taisa explained is still here, so why wouldn't they have to return? The B'shana Hachir is different because Amakra. The pasuk says in the Yikra, "Al tikach me'itoy neshach v'tarbis." Don't take from him interest. And the pasuk says over there, "V'reisim lakecha," you should have fear from your God. V'cheach ichi imach, your brother should live with you. So ahadrle, give him back the interest, kehecha denachi badach, that he can live with you. Like that's what the objective of the pasuk is. But the pasuk is telling us, the Torah is warning him that you who took the interest, you have to give it back. The Torah is not warning his son, and therefore, Rava says, even though you say the Rishus Yerish is lav Rishus Lekech, it's not a transfer of possession. Still, the Torah doesn't mandate giving it back only if you're the one who took the interest. So the Gemara just ends off now and says, the Mandi Masan, the one who taught Rabbi Chama's teaching, Abraisa, on this brisa that we're bringing over here now in the second version, Koshkin Amas Nitin. For sure, he would say, which we said on the previous Amid, on the halacha of our Mishnah. In the halacha of our Mishnah, there's no other reason to let the children off the hook, but from this concept that must be Rishus or Yerish is Rishus Lekech, that it's like a Shin Rishus, because as long as you don't make like there's words missing in the Mishnah the way you have to say, if you want to say like Rava, which he has to say Kasha Achlam, and we bring a Brisa or Baishia who qualified and said like a whole interpolation. You have to add on things in. Sounds like that the stolen item is still here. You would have to say because it's like Rishos Lekech. So if you say his teaching on the Brisa, for sure you would say it on the Mishnah. But man the Maslamas Nitin, but the one who said it on the previous Amid, on the halacha of our Mishnah, Avala Brisa, but you could say regarding the halacha of the Brisa of not having to give back the ribis to the borrower, you could actually say that Rabbi Kama Karava Masna would actually learn like Rava, that is not because Rishus Yerish Rishus Lekech Dami, it would be simply based on the reasoning of the pasuk, the way Rava says that the pasuk only is mechayiv, the one who lent it on the interest is the one who has to give back the interest, but the son does not have to. Rashi brings a different girsa, the opposite, that one who learns it on the Mishnah for sure on the Brisa, because the Mishnah you could explain like Rava did, B'sha Achlam, when the children ate it, but the Brisa says that they know it's ribis, obviously that it's still around, and still we're saying the putter, obviously Rishos Yerish Keshus Lekech, but the one that says on the Brisa, you could say on the Mishnah, Rambam Chama would actually hold like Rava, that B'sha Achlam, but he says he likes the first pshat, which the gears we have in our Gemara. Now the Gemara continues, turn about in the Brisa. Haglezel umachal es banav, which is the halacha of our Mishnah. Someone steals and he feeds it to his children. So betur milashalim. So they're exempt from paying, as we explained. And hidniach lefneim. What's if, let's say, the father didn't feed it to them, he died, and now it fell for Yerusha to his children. So the Brisa differentiates. Gedolim, if the children are adults, chayam l'sham, they have to pay it back. Which Rashi points out, you would have to say, according to Bava Kama, that's talking about lefnei years, before years, because If it's achar yish, then how does that make sense? It's rishus yerish keshus lekeach, and then it would be shin rishus. So just like a lekeach, after yish would not have to pay it back. So to the yarshim, so Rashi says must be Bava Kama would explain that it's still not before years. Okay, before years, so then it's still considered b'shus of the marekai, and therefore the adults would have to pay it back. But katanim, if the inheritors are children, are minors, petur milashalom, they're exempt from paying it back. Why? Because children are not people that you could take to court. So even though the stolen item is there, but it's still lacking collection from the children. And this is going like Sumchis, who we're going to quote later on, that says that children are exempt because you can't take them to court. You can take them when they become adults, but at this point you can't take them to court, and therefore they're going to be patur from paying it back. Now, further along, says the Brisa, now if the adult children say, we don't know the calculations that our father made with you. Maybe our father already calculated with you the monetary value that he owes you, and maybe you got your money already. So P'turin, they're going to be exempt. So the Gemara doesn't like this. Says, wait a second, the Amri ain't onu yoidim, because they say we don't know P'turin, they're going to be exempt? What? They know that this money came to the father through stealing. So the victim is a bari. He's a definite. They're coming with like a shema. Maybe we don't know. Maybe the father already did. That's a bari b'shema. Bari b'shema, bari adav. Right, that would be the other. But the point is that they don't have a definite claim. So that's what the Gemara told.
He wants the money back.
What?
They don't even need to have any claim. The burden of proving.
Right, but that's right. But that's what the concept of bari b'shema. That's a question.
Bari b'shema was two people. Well, I had it first. I'm not sure I got it first. Those are two people who come to tell. They were thinking, but if you want money, you come with a proof and claim. If you don't have the proof, why do I have to pay you? Maybe you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So
he could say he's borrowing till 100%. If I come over and says, I'm 100% you owe me money.
So that's machlek. So the Gemara elsewhere discusses that if
the burden of proving it, it's clear.
no, but we know that it's stolen.
It's not legal.
But we know it's stolen.
The question is, did he pay it back?
Right.
So that means that you have to prove.
But this money was stolen. He gave you other money?
So who needs to prove?
You have
The
the
Moitzi Mechavero.
Gezel Lefanenu.
Right. Yeah. So actually, in the next part of the Gemara, like you'll see, like Taisus is trying to find like ways of explaining how they could get themselves off the hook. But it sounds like that. I mean, I'm saying the concept you're saying, the Gemara elsewhere discusses that and says that even if you have a defendant who says a shema, that's a weak shema that we'll be able to extract. It's not always just of a definite claim. But like upon him, that's the way Rashi is explaining it. If you didn't even say that, it would say, what, because we don't know, how is that letting them off the hook? But you're admitting to the guilt of the gezel. So how is your not knowing somewhat, extracting you from your obligation of paying back the stolen items? So Meravi says, this is what they were saying. If the adult children say, we know the calculations our father made with you, and he doesn't owe you anything, then Peturin. So they're making a definite claim that we know that he doesn't owe you, which Taisus even there struggles to say how they believed even. See, Taisus is almost going the other extreme from you, like in the sense of like, what I mean. So how they believed when they say this. So Taisus says that either that's a migui, because they could say, we gave it back to you, or he says that there was no witnesses that it was stolen. You just have the children who admitted that it was stolen, and then when they say that so you see how it strengthens your question, but Taisus, you see, is saying the exact opposite. He's trying to find, how do we believe them? Because, like, what do you mean? We know it's stolen. What do you mean? We know the calculation. You have to prove now that it was given back.
It must be that he has witnesses, so that's the proof, and that now nobody shows that they gave back, so he's the bori, and he proves that it was stolen.
Right.
So it could be now
Exactly. Now you have to prove that you gave it back. Right. Okay. Tanya will learn another brisa. Again, continue on these themes of our Mishnah. If someone steals and he feeds it to his children. So B'tur Melashalim, again, like we said, that you're going to be patur from paying because it's by the children, it's not here anymore. What happens if, and this was the way Rava had explained our Mishnah, if let's say he leaves it in front of them and they ate it. So ben kitam mekitam chayavim. Whether they're adults or they're minors, not like the way we said in our Mishnah, at least the way Rava explained our Mishnah, chayavim, they're going to be obligated to pay it back. Says Gemara, really? If young children, let's say an 8-year-old, the father died, there was something in the fridge that the father stole and he ate it, you think the 8-year-old is obligated to pay? There shouldn't be any more than when if the child himself goes and damages. Let's say a child goes into the victim's courtyard and he damages. You think a child would be obligated to pay? We learned in the Mishnah Daf Pezayim and Af that says that if young children injure others, they're pater. So here, since he ate what the father had stolen and left over, who are you forcing to pay? It can't be any more than when he himself goes and damages something. So my papa says, no. The case of the Braisa is saying, although the words Bava Kama, no, the Girsa actually should be, if the father left in front of them and they did not eat it yet. Then, and then whether they're adults or whether they're children, they can be obligated to return the why. Since the stolen item is still around, it's still considered b'shus d'mach, it's still in the possession of the owner, which, as Rashi points out, this is going like the Rabbanan who disagree on sumchas. So don't ask from the previous price that we said only gedel machayav and mekitam are going to be potter, and here we're saying that ben gedel mekitam are going to be chayiv, because that's machlekes, as we'll see on the bottom of the amid between Rabbanan and sumchas regarding the halacha of ketanim. Are ketanim, meaning generally you'd say, of course you chayiv, that stolen item is still around. The machlekes would be, however, would you say ketanim are going to be potter because you cannot take ketanim to court, and that's why they're going to be potter. That's the machlekes between two brises. That's the machlekes Rabbanan and sumchas. Now, Amar Rava continues, and he says, if the father died and he left them a cow that he had borrowed, his neighbor said, yeah, you could have it for a few months, and the father died. So the orphans could use that cow for the rest of the time of the loan period. Now, what happens if Mesa? If the cow dies, so generally a shayil is chayiv on everything, even einzin, no matter, even there was a circumstance beyond his control. Here, ein chayavim ba'inseha. The orphans are not liable for if an einis happens because, like Rashi explains, they didn't accept the responsibility for the cow. So, although they could use it because their father had borrowed it, but they don't have that liability, and therefore they're not going to be responsible if an einis happens. What happens if kisvurim shalavim he? What happens if they didn't know that their father had borrowed it? They thought it's the father's. And they had a shleishim sida, and they go and they slaughter the cow and they eat it. And then they find out that this wasn't the father's, this was borrowed. So they pay the money of how much cheap meat would cost, which every zuz we calculate in 4 donkey, which, as Rashi explains, wherever we say bezol, cheaper, Daf Yomi base tells us that means 2/3 of the money. Meaning they don't pay the full value because had they know that they have to pay, they would not have eaten meat. And they just pay how much benefit they had, which is 2/3 of the value, and the skin they give back as it is to the real owner. However, if their father left them over unmovable assets such as land, then they have to pay. Now, there were 2 halachas that we said here in this teaching of Rava. One was that if it dies, they're not chayiv in the einis. And another halacha was if they think it's the father's and they slaughter and they eat it, they pay dimei masa bezel. And then we say, but if the father left them over, they have to pay. So ikad demasnila, that those who learn that this teaching of hanich lehen avin achayis nachasim, if the father leaves them over property, then they are chayiv. That those who learn that aresha on the first teaching, which we said that if the animal dies, which is einis, they're not chayiv. On that, the end is teaching if the father left them over property, then they do have to pay. Why? Because the father's assets already, there's a lien on it from when he was alive, when he had borrowed the cow, because Rava holds in the first version that the chiyuv of einsim is from the moment you borrow, imposed on the borrower, which would disagree with what we're going to quote from Rav Papa shortly, that says, no, the chiyuv of einsim is not imposed on the borrower until the einus actually happens. But you don't have the chiyuv of the einsim from the time of the she'ela, of when you borrow. It's only when the actual accident happens. What? Yeah, so we're going to see the nafkamina exactly in a moment. So those who say that this last teaching was going on the first teaching, some say no, it's going on the second teaching, regarding if the children didn't know it was the father's and they slaughtered and they ate it. So he said they pay cheap meat, that's how much they pay. And that says the teaching that if the father left them over karka, then they have to pay the full price because they're taking the place of the father, and since they ate it, so then they have to pay for it because the father has property to pay for it. So the Gemara explains these two different versions. Man de mastin la areisha, the one who teaches going on the reisha, mean when the oinus happens, which is by itself, the animal just dies. So koshkin seifa. For sure, you would say it on the seifa when they went and they did an action, they slaughtered it. For sure, that they would have to pay full price, which would plead Rav Papa. As we're going to quote Rav Papa shortly, that disagrees with Rav Papa regarding to the halacha of the reisha. But man de masin la seifa, the one who teaches only their chayiv when they slaughter it and they do an action and they butcher it, so to speak, and then they have to pay the full price because the father has karka to pay from. Avla reisha, but when in the case of the reisha, when the animal dies in its normal way, which is an einus, not like when they went and they did a maisa b'yadayim, they did a maisa mazik, it was just an einus, loy. No, we don't say that there's a lien on the father's assets, because there is no chiyuv of einsin on the shayil until the moment when the einus happens. Here, and this is answering your question, here when the einus happened, the shayil is not around anymore. The father died, and then the animal died, like it was an accident, and the animal died a few weeks later. So that the father never accepted upon himself, because his chiyuv einsin did not take effect when he borrowed it. Chiyuv of his einsin is only when it actually happens, and he's not around at that time. And the children never took a. What does it mean when you borrow it?
What does it mean?
It means to say when you take the borrowing, now you have this responsibility of the einsim at this point already. And there. No, you could say.
It's because you borrowed it.
Right. It's because. The question is, however, when does it take effect? Do we say that it's already yours? Now you have to give me, like, in other words, the chiyuv is now ready? Or no, you don't have no chiyuv.
Oinus never happens, I'm not here.
But that responsibility for that, is that taking effect right now? Or does it take effect when it actually happens? When are you undersigning that I'm responsible for this? When it happens? Or when you do the she'ela, when you do the actual borrowing? Which could sound like a semantics, but it's usually nafkamina in this case about, like, is it b'shas the einus? When does your chiyuv happen? That's when it's activated, or is it activated in the beginning? So that's what the Gemara is saying, that according to the second version, regarding the halacha of the reisha, no, the children would not be chayiv, even though the father left over karka, because the shayil didn't take upon the responsibility when he borrowed it. It's only when it happens, and at that point, it's not alive anymore. Which says the Gemara, v'hain Rav Papa. That's actually what Rav Papa says. Why? Because Rav Papa, he says the following halacha. He says, if haisa parah genuvalai, if let's say someone had already stolen the cow from before Shabbos, and v'tavcha b'Shabbos, and then he slaughters it on Shabbos. So chayiv, he's liable even to pay what's called dalad v'hei when you slaughter a stolen cow. Why? Shekvar chayiv b'geneva, because you already were liable for the principle of what you stole, which was from Erev Shabbos. Kodim sheyabel the Isser Shabbos, before you came to the Isser skila of shechting on Shabbos. Now, although the knas of dalad v'hei is not coming until you do the shechita on Shabbos, that's not going to exempt you from the penalty, because the fact that you're getting a chiyuv misa for the same as slaughtering, although we generally say kim l'b'ramene, because the Gemara Ksubas of Lamadam Beis tells us kanas is a chiddush. It's a novelty that the Torah introduces a penalty, and therefore even though you're getting killed, you'll pay for the kanas. So the principle you already were chayiv from before Shabbos. The Dal V'Hei, which is add-on to that, is a knas. And the knas you can be chayiv, even though you're getting a chayiv misa for that same action.
That's not in Shaykh. I mean, the actions were completely, forget it. What if he stole it and he checked it a month later on Shabbos?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, that's just a practical case of it was a day later. Now, what happens if Haisib Parah Shulaloi? Now, this is the one that's different. What happens if the cow was lent to him for Tavcha b'Shabbos, and then he went and he shechted on Shabbos? So Pater, he's going to be Pater from everything. Meaning, we don't say, and this is the critical point that we're saying is like Rav Papa's halacha, which Rav Papa is saying this like the second version of Rav's teaching. We don't say from the moment that he borrowed it, he's already liable for the principal, and it's in his possession, even if the angel of death comes and visits the cow, that, okay, it's already your responsibility. No, it's only at the time of the slaughtering that he's stealing it.
Borrowing is much different than stealing, right? But stealing, that's Gemar Malacha.
No, but I'm saying
when you borrow and you do the shechita, that is when you are...
Right, the only question is about when is it considered in your possession. That's like we're saying, it might sound like semantics, but like, do we say that already it was yours and you have to give it back, but it was already like yours from the moment that you borrowed it? Or we say, no, it's not mine. The principle is still yours. And when something happens, then it's mine, and then I gotta pay you back. So what we're saying over here is that your Isser Shabbos v'Isser Geneva boin ke'echad. The violation of Malacha of Shabbos, which is the slaughtering, and the stealing are happening at the same time, and therefore you're going to be exempt from the principle because of Kim Lebramene. And as Rashi points out, there's no knas either, because there's no kefil nor dalad v'hei, only by Ganav himself, either that steals from the owner, or by Shemachin, who's coming to exempt himself by making a toyin times Ganav, he's saying that it was stolen from him. But a shoyel, a borrower, or someone who's getting paid to watch, or is a renter, he cannot get himself off the hook by making a claim that it was stolen. So there's no kefil, as we say many times, many places, like we said in Daf Zayin, that no, if you're going to say about Shemachinim, who pays kefil, what are you going to say about Shemesach, etc. So therefore, says Rav Papa, that in the case of when it was borrowed and he slaughtered on Shabbos, then he's going to be pater, because it's happening at the same time. That is only happening at the same time, only because he holds, like the second version of Rava, that it was not in his possession from the moment that he borrowed it. It's only in his possession when something actually happens to it, which is when he did the tvicha. That's when he's chayiv for the keren. Then you're already chayiv misa for that same thing, so you're going to be pater in that case. So that's like the second version, whereas the first version of Rava is not like that, as we explained, that he would hold that no, it's already in your rishus, already from the time of the Geneva, and meaning from the time of the borrowing, and that's why if the father had achrayis nachasim, if he has karka, that the children would be chayiv according to that first version, even if it's mesi, even if it dies on its own. That's the two different versions of Rava, if it's like Rav Papa or not. Now, going back to explain the halacha of our Mishnah, it says in the pasuk that they should return the stolen item that he stole. So, what does it teach us when it says that he stole? It means yachzik ke'ein shegazel. Should return it as it was stolen. In other words, if the stolen item is still around, he has to return it. But if it's not around, he's pater. Which Rashi here, all the way on the bottom, says it can't be talking about the guy himself, because obviously he has to return it. Rather, it's talking about his children, which we have machlekes on the previous Amud, if it's that dafka after years. But be that as it may, you only have to give it back as it is. From this we say, if someone steals and he feeds it to his children, so it's not around anymore, it's not kein shegazel, then they're exempt from paying. What happens if in let's say it's still around, he died and he left him for front of his children. So there's them being chayavin, and you're right, whether they're adults, whether they're minors, so they would have to return it. That's the opinion of the Tana Kama, which we said this already before, that's the two different brises. The one brise that said that when it's around you have to return it is going like the Rabbanon. They said, no, Gedem Chayavin, only adults are obligated, but meaning if the Yershim are in their 20s, 30s, but Ketan B'turim, if the Yershim are minors, then they're patur again because they're not B'nai Din. They can't take them to court, and therefore they're going to be exempt from paying it back. Which that gets us into a whole conversation regarding this halacha about minors, and also its extension of Shlei B'fnei Baal Din, not in front of the litigant, because that's essentially what we consider minors like. So the Gemara brings a story. Bar Chamud Rabbi Yirmiyah, the brother-in-law, meaning the son of the father-in-law of Rabbi Yirmiyah, who was a child, Tarak Gali Ba'apid Rabbi Yirmiyah. There was a door that was open into his father's house, which he closed. He didn't let Rabbi Yirmiyah come in, because Rabbi Yirmiyah wanted to take possession of the house after his father-in-law passed away. So Asa Kamad Rabbavan. Rabbi Yirmiyah came from the Rabbavan. Amar Rabbavan said, Shalahu Teveya. He's claiming what's his. He wants to hold on to his father's house. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said to him, but I could bring witnesses that I already took possession of this house when his father was still alive. Meaning, as Rashi, the last Rashi explains here on the Amid, he was claiming that his father sold it to him, or gave it to him. That his shver said, you could have my house. And now his shver passed away, and his brother-in-law, this little kid, is locking the door, not letting him come into the house. So Amalei said to him, what? You could bring witnesses? Who cares? Do you think we accept witnesses not in front of the litigant? As Rashi explains, a child is like he's not here. So how would it help to bring witnesses to show that, that you already bought this or your shver gave it to you as a gift? It doesn't help. It's shalei b'fnei baldin. So on that he said to him, V'loi, what, you think it doesn't work? But Vaktani, what do you mean? The Bryce we just brought before said, Ben Gedel, Megedem Chayavin, that the Tana Kama Rabbanan said, that if the stolen item is still around, whether the inheritors are adults or minors, they're obligated. Well, minors, how are they obligated? Obviously, you could take a child to court, and they have to return the stolen goods. So to over here, I'm going to bring this child, my brother-in-law, to court, and I'm going to get the house. That's my shver's house. Amalei said to him, but Hari Machlekes Sumchas B'tzidcha. Says, what do you mean? But Sumchas we have disagrees. And he says, no, Ketan Aperturin. Says he can't take a child to court. So on that, Amar, he says, Ichval Kuli Ame B'koike Sumchas. What do you think? We're gonna double over the whole world, and everyone's gonna be like Sumchas Lavkun L'Didi to extract from me? Wait, since when do we hold like Sumchas that you tell me Sumchas disagrees and says you can't take a child to court? Now the Hachi, in the meantime, Egalgal Milsa, the story was evolving, and Asa Matl came into Rebbe Vo. They came and the question came in front of Rebbe Vo. Amar, he said, didn't you hear Hadar Rabbi Yisrael Bar Chama Amar Ba'ishya? Which is Amar Rabbi Yisrael Bar Chama Amar Ba'ishya. He says the following halacha, which will answer our question. Tinik, Shatakav Ba'avadav, a child that took his slaves with him to help him, or it means that he grabbed a hold of his slave and said it's mine. And he went into his friend's field, and he says, mine. We don't say that we wait till he becomes an adult. No, we take it away from the child right away. And when he becomes an adult, then let him bring witnesses, and then we'll see if it's his or not. So we see from this halacha that we pass like the Rabbanon that we do take away stuff from children. So therefore, we should kick this kid out of the house and let Rabbi Yirmiyah take over the house. On that, the Gemara answers, "Me dummy, is it comparable?" Hasam over there, when the child's taking his slaves and he's going out to his friend's field saying it's his. Yeah, then we take it away from him because this child does not have in this field achazaka davua. It doesn't have any prior status of ownership of his father. No chazaka. So therefore, we kick him out. But when the child has in this house, like this story, chazaka davua, this was his father's house, so we don't remove him from the house. And therefore, when he becomes an adult, then let Rabbi Yirmiyah bring witnesses and have a court case with him. But for now, we're not going to let Rabbi Yirmiyah kick out this kid from the house. Maybe the baby could yarshin. The 1-day-old baby could yarshin.
Yeah, but the option cannot bring the witnesses. You have to wait till you complete.
So that depends. We don't usually, if it's something for the detriment of of a child. We only make up a Shabbos for when it's l'tkune, to make things better for the children, but not obviously here to kick a kid out of the house. We're not gonna point out a Shabbos. Which
So if he goes into the today, claims it's his.
right, that's different because he's not coming with any chazak over there.
So then the Shiagmin is okay, and the Potapus is not okay.
No, when it becomes an adult, then they'll go to court
The Potapus cannot do it as well.
to take over a field. You have to know to go and take over someone else's field. Would you say such a thing? It's not maintaining. It's really trying to get something. Now, related on this theme of meaning with this idea of being makabel edus shalei b'fnei baldin, which the Rashba explains that everyone agrees regarding din nefashos when it's capital cases that ein makabel edus shalei b'fnei baldin, because the pasuk of the Shar Niskel states of hud b'balav, like we're going to bring shortly. The Torah says, the Torah requires that to only be present when his ox is sentenced to death. Machlekes, as we're going to see, is only regarding din and regarding monetary cases. So the Gemara brings Amar Rav Asher Rav Shabtoi. Mekablan eidim shalei b'fnei baldin. We could accept testimony when it's not in front of the litigant. So Torah Rabbi Yochanan wonders, says, really? Mekablan eidim shalei b'fnei baldin? You think we accept testimony not in front of the litigant? So Kiblu Minei. So they received from him, Rabbi Yisrael Chanina, that meaning there's specific cases when we would say this. Right, generally we don't accept Eidim Shalei B'fnei Baldim, but there are going to be certain exceptions. Kagoin Shahiu Chayla. If let's say the claimant was ill, or his witnesses were ill, meaning they were in danger of dying, like the famous words Rashi quotes, if you're not going to let them testify now because the guy's not around, then when are they going to be able to testify? They're about to die. So that would be extenuating circumstances, like they say. And the big boat is leaving, and they want to go overseas, and they send for the defendant. He doesn't come. In that circumstance, that's where we're going to allow these witnesses to testify shaloi b'fnei baldin because of extenuating circumstances. Moreover, he also says, yes, we accept witnesses, not in front of the litigant. So Ukva says, to me it was explained from Shmuel, it's kagun de paschal bedine. It's specifically where Bezdin began the proceedings of his court case. And they sent for him, he doesn't come. Oh, that's where we're going to accept testimony, even if he's not there. But if they didn't open up yet with his court case, then Matzi Amalei, he could tell them, I want to go to the great court in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, they can't just accept testimony when he's not there. Which Shais discusses, is this something only that the defendant could do? Could the claimant also make such a thing? Like, oh, I want to take, either pay me or I'm taking you to the Bes Nagadol. But the Gemara says, if that's the case, so I understand then. Then even when they did start the court case, he should still be able to tell them, I want to go to the great court. So why is this only if you didn't start that you can't accept? So Ravina says, no, we're talking about where, for example, his fellow litigant is holding a diska, a letter, from the great court, that they sent to the court over here to force him to have this court case over here. And therefore, once you already started, then it's already too late. And that's why they could accept testimony even if he's not around. Now, related to Amar Rav says, Mekayim is shtar. We could validate a document, authenticate it, saying that the witnesses that signed it are true, etc. Shlei b'fnei baldin, not in front of the litigant. So Rashi explains, if the witnesses that were signed on it wanted to go overseas, so the lender could bring them to court and they testify on their handwriting, and the court writes beneath it, in the presence of us three, the judges, these and this people came and they testified on their signature, and we validate, we authenticate as we see it. Taisa says, I don't understand. If the witnesses wanted to go overseas, the way Rashi says, so then why would you have to talk about Kiyum Shtaris? Even actual testimony you could accept, as the Gemara just said before, Shalei B'fnei Baldin. So the Ri says, no. This halacha is in all situations that you could authenticate a document, Shalei B'fnei Baldin, because Kiyum Shtaris is only D'Rabbanan. Because anytime you have witnesses on the document, it's kemish nechker dus bezin dam, as the Gemara says in Kesubas Daf Yitches. It's like as if it was already verified in the court of law. And you don't need the kiyum, it's only rabbinically that you need it. So therefore you could authenticate it even shalei b'fnei Baal Din. Now, then how do you explain the next part of the Gemara? Rabbi Yechon disagrees. He says, no, no, you cannot authenticate a document shalei b'fnei Baal Din, not in front of the litigant. But the way Taisa explained it's only rabbinic, why is that? So Taisa says that Rabbi Yechon holds what's called loy plug. The Rabbanah did not differentiate between kiyum shtaris and regarding regular accepting of testimony, which is that in general you cannot do it shlei b'fnei Baal Din. To which Amalei Rav Sheish Rav Yisrael Bar Avuah says, Asber lach tamad Rabbi Yechon. I'm going to explain to you the reasoning of Rabbi Yechon. Why does he hold that the kiyum shtaris cannot be done shlei b'fnei Baal Din? Because Amakra, it's a pasuk in Shemais, which again the Rashbad explained that everyone agrees to this pasuk, to this principle, on the din nefashis level. The question is, what do we compare it to? Amakra, the pasuk says in Shemais, v'huad b'balav, you testify regarding the owner. And he didn't watch his ox 3 times, so then you're going to go ahead and stone the ox to death, which is din nefashis, albeit to an animal, but which we learn out from dini adam. So the Torah says, Yove balashar, b'yam al-shari. The owner of the ox has to come and stand on his ox, meaning to say that it has to be b'fnei Baal Din, which Taisa explains, wait a second, if everyone agrees to that pasuk, as even Rav agrees to that, Yove balashar, so what do we explain that for Rabbi Yechanan? What it means to say is, even kiyum shtaris, Rabbi Yechon hold, Yove balashar, b'yam al-shari, mean that principle because of a loy plug, but it's really because of kiyum shtaris being d'Rabbanan. Now, Amar Rava continues and he says, Hilchas halacha is, Mekaymen as a shtar shalom b'fnei Baal Din, you could authenticate a document not in front of the litigant, even if the defendant is standing with tzavach and he's screaming, don't validate it, it's a forgery, we're not concerned. Now, if he says, Nikitu lizim, no, give me some time, in the sahadi until I'm going to be able to go ahead and bring witnesses, and that I'll be able to go ahead and show you that the document is forged. So then, we grant his request. Now, asa, if he comes, so fine, asa he comes. Asa, if he doesn't come, bahab. So then we wait for him, what we know as the acronym as bahab, as 3 consecutive sessions in the court, which is a Monday, Thursday, and a Monday. Now, asa, if he doesn't come at that point in time, so Kesvinan, and this is going through the whole evolutionary process of the court system. If he doesn't come, Kesvinan Pesicha Ilave, Tishan Yemen. We write a Pesicha. What's a Pesicha? So this is what's called, Rashi says, a Shtar Shamta, a document of excommunication. Meaning, because he didn't pay his debt, we write this Shtar of Pesicha that he's in the excommunication. We're not collecting yet, but it's some type of a document that this guy is in Shamta. Which is what's 90 days. So Tlasin Kamoy, the first 30 days, we don't go down yet to collect the actual assets that he has. Because the aim where we say, the guy's really busy, he's trying to go ahead and get money to collect and pay up this debt. Now, the middle 30 days, we also don't go down and collect from his assets. Because they say, maybe he didn't find anyone to borrow money from. Because he can't borrow, what's the next best thing? You got to sell off some of your assets. It's not ideal, but you try to borrow first. That's the first 30 days. You see no one's lending you. You say, hey, you want to sell off. Now, the last 30 days, you also don't go to collect from his assets. Because you say, you're right, he was able to sell it, but the buyer is trying to borrow money to pay. You're getting a good deal here, the guy's desperate, he has to pay back something. So that's what accounts for 90 days, that you're not collecting yet from his assets. Now, Lo Yosef, after 90 days, the guy still didn't come, then kasvinan adarachta anechse. What's that? Adarachta is a psak din, that the lender has permission to go down into the assets of the borrower, and he could take it in the valuation of the debt that's owed to him. Now, when did we say this, that you go through this whole process and you could go and collect from him? Is the Amar, he says, Asina. He says, look, I'm coming. He says, they're coming. So he said, okay, when you're coming, we're giving you this, and we're giving you that time, etc., 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 etc. Aval Amalai Asina, he says, Ech kimnish, then, then we right away, we write it. You guys go collect this stuff. Now, there's a few more qualifications. The Hanamili, when we say this is b'milva, specifically by a loan. and this guy owes that debt. By a deposit, you write it right away, because what do you mean? A deposit is he has it. So right away you could go and collect it. Moreover, when do we write this? Is amakarkoi. It's only on the debtor's karka. But we don't write this document of collection on his movable assets. You know why? Because Dilma Shamad va'achalu ma'avul metaltalin. You know what's going to happen? It's a possibility that the lender is going to consume the metaltalin, because, look, I have rights, the court lets me go down, because this guy's refusing to participate in the court case. The problem is, but what's going to end up happening is the bar is going to finally find his witnesses. And he's going to show that the documentation was a forgery. It's too late. So he's not going to have anything to collect back because the lender already consumed the movable items. So we don't let him. Karki could always get back. So that's what we let him collect, but not metaltalin. Now, however, v'i islay mekar koi lamalva, but says the Gemara. But if the lender has his own property, then katzvina, then actually we do write the adarachta to allow the lender to collect the borrower's metaltalin, because even if he ends up consuming the metaltalin, at least the borrower will be able to get back what's owed to him from the lender's own property itself. Which the Gemara, however, rejects. The Gemara says, it's not true. That halach is not correct. Adarachta and metaltalin, because we don't write on movable items. Because avagav the islay mekar koi, because even though the lender has property, which, okay, even if we're stuck, we show it's a forgery, that he could get his property, we're concerned that maybe the properties of the lender is going to be ruined, it's going to be devalued, and therefore it's not going to be able to give you enough to collect the metaltalin that was incorrectly consumed by this liar, this lender. Moreover, continues the Gemara, when we write this arachta, which allows the collection from the assets of the borrower, we let him know, we notify him that this collection is coming out against him. We drop flyers from the planes and that they know that we're coming for them. But the hanvi, when we say this and we let him know, is the mikriv, if he's nearby. Of mirchak, but if he's far away, then we don't do that. Now, however, the mirchak, if he's far away, but ve'ikka kroivim, but he has relatives, or inami, or additionally, ikka shayarta da'azli b'asa hasam, there are caravans that come and go over there. Oh, so then, then we wait for him 12 months, until the caravan comes and goes. Kihad Ravina, like we have by Ravina, Shah Maracha, he made Maracha wait, I mean his name was Maracha, and he had a debt that was owed to him, and the bar was not in town. He made him wait 12 months, until the caravans came from Bechazai, so that the borrower knows about it, and then you could go collect from his assets. The Gemara rejects the raya here, but says, "Well, it's not true." Hasam over there by Maracha, Inish Allah Mahava. He was a balvan. He was a strong type of a person. And if he would get this adarachta, I mean, we waited 12 months for it, because if he would get it, that you would never be able to get back the stuff from him that he collected. But here in general, we actually don't wait 12 months. Ella rather, if which Taisa says is not necessarily a Tuesday, it's just that we presume that Monday was the court case. The agent goes on Tuesday, and he comes on Wednesday, and on Thursday is when the court case is, meaning, as Rashi explains, Mondays and Thursdays are when the courts are open in town, which is the kind of Ezra that we had on Daf Pebezim and Aleph in Meruba. So that's how long we wait for him. We don't wait for him anything longer. We don't wait for 12 months. Now, Amar Avina, he says, Hay shluchah d'Rabbanan. This agent of the court, which he goes to do a hasmana, which he summons a guy to court, and then he comes back to court and he says the guy doesn't want to come. We believe him like two witnesses where he wouldn't lie in court. So even though he's one person, we believe him to say that this guy Taka is not coming from the summons. Now, when did we say we believe the shliach bezdin? Is only for excommunication. But for the next stage of a psicha, to write a shtar shamta on him, to write a documentation of excommunication, that when you undo the shamta, they don't permit it until he gives the money of the shtar psichta to the cipher. I mean, someone has to write this. Someone's got to get paid over here. So who pays the services is the people who make the petitions. The problem here is that this is being written against a guy who's refusing to come to court. That case, the shtar shamta, since they're going to cause him a loss of money, because the kaboyle lemesa b'zuz l'saver, he's going to have to give the money to the sefer. Then we don't believe the shliach bezdin to say he's refusing to come to court until we have two witnesses, because that would be a loss of money. Another teaching, Amar Avina, he says Yavina and Zimna. We do hazmana, as it's called in the common parlance, is that we summon the litigants to a certain day for their court case, apuma de itza, based on the word of a woman's mouth, meaning who she's going to him because that's where she's heading to, or apuma de shivavi, based on his neighbors, meaning we rely on them that they're going to do the agency, say, oh, you're heading to him? Let him know that he has a summons to come next Thursday. And if he doesn't come, we presume that he's reckless and we put him into chayrim because he's not coming. Now, but we didn't say this el delesa b'masa. Only if that guy wasn't in town right now, and they're telling his neighbors when he comes back, let him know that he has a court case on that day. But as a continue top of Kafi Gimel Med Aleph, but if he's in town, then we don't excommunicate him because the woman and the neighbors will not do their agency. Why not? Because we say, Aimer, we should say loy amrle. They didn't tell him. Why? Because they say, oh, hashkechin the shlich of the bezdin. V'amrle. Probably the court's agent found him and told him. And in that case, we have to actually send him another agent afterwards to let him know, because if he's in town, then they're going to presume that someone had already told him, and they're not going to really tell him what they were told. Moreover, we didn't say this, meaning that, but when he's out of town, that it is going to work, is only when this guy is coming back home, that he doesn't have way to pass on his way the path of the courts. Above the beidina, but if on his way back he's passing by the entryway of the courthouse, then then we don't rely on the neighbors. Because again, they're going to say, Ashkechu beidina, Amrle must have been, he probably passed by, they already told him on his way home, and therefore they're not going to tell him. Moreover, we didn't say Yomei, only if he comes back that day. If he doesn't come back that day, then again, we don't rely on them, because we're going to say that they forgot about what they were told, that before he comes back, when he's coming back, that they should tell him. And again, all these circumstances were not going to be valid to put the guy in chayrim for not coming. Anytime.